not allowed, people always seem to think that it's improper. They either act shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German seems a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe it to be so. Gwendolyne, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
This is so easy.
Charming day has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else, and that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
And I'd like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
Well, I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I've met you, I've admired you more than any girl I've ever met. Since I met you.
Yes, I am quite well aware of the fact. And I often wish that, in public at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you've always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. As I hope you know, it's quite delicious. The fact is possibly the more expensive monthly magazines that has precipitated to pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone by the name Earnest. There's something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. And the moment Algernon mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, well, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyne?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't really mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
Yes, but your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know it is. But supposing it was something else. Do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Well, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, there's little resemblance to the actual facts of your life as we know them.
Well, really, Gwendolyne, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care about the name Ernest. Don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It's a divine name. It has music to it. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolyne, I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, is a charming name.
Jack. No. No. There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they were all, without exception, more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. And I pity any woman married to a man called John. She'll probably never be able to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolyne, I must be christened at once. I mean, we must be married at once. There's no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely you know that I love you. And you've led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you're not absolutely indifferent to me either.
Well, I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyne?
Yes, Mr. Worthing? What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyne, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long have you been about it? I'm afraid you have very little experience in how to propose.
Young one, I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. My girlfriends always tell me so. Wonderfully brown eyes you have, Ernest. Yes, they are quite brown. I hope you will always look at me just like this, especially when other people are present.
Mr. Worthing! I sit from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mama, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Pardon me. You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father, should his health permit him, shall inform you of the facts. Engagement is something that should come upon a young girl as a surprise, as pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. It is hardly a thing she can be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have some questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing, and while I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyne, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mama!
The carriage, Gwendolyne.